Hey internet, what's up? It's me, lo-fi musician and producer, Blue Sirens. Today, I want to talk to you about something that you should think about doing in 2025, and that is creating a new artist bio. 2024 is over, you've got plenty of things you can look back on and mention it in your bio. And what better place to start than right now? We've got a couple days left in 2024, and you can get that going so day one of 2025, it's ready to post. In this video, I'm going to go over 3 different types of bios you can use depending on where you are in your musical career. If you're starting out, maybe as a new artist or doing a new project. If you've been doing music for a while and you've got a couple releases under your belt. And lastly, if you've been doing music for a long time, if you've got a following, or if you're just satisfied where you are in your career, the last one will be really for you. Now, before I go in, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, but mostly, don't forget to have your bio proofread and maybe even written by somebody else. You can definitely write it yourself, but remember, write it in the third person because you want your bio to kind of read as a story. It's not an interview where you're saying, oh, I did this or I did that. You want someone to read your story, and that's what your bio is, telling your story about yourself from another person's perspective, essentially. So let's dive in. The first bio is going to be if you're just starting out. So in this one, if it's a new project or if you're a first-time artist and you're going to release something new, this one's going to be for you. The first thing you want to write is where you're from, what your name is, and what genre you're doing. So you could start out as Blue Sirens is a lo-fi musician from New York City. And from there, you're going to dive in really into why you want to be an artist or what your current project is about. I would focus more so on the project you're promoting. If it's your first one, I hope you've taken the time to make sure this is the best project it can be, and then really highlight yourself inside this project. Because if this song, if the music is true to what you're doing, then that should shine through as you're writing about the songs and what they mean to you. So you can write something along the lines of, this song means a lot to me because of this kind of inspiration and the instruments that we used on it, and I was inspired by this artist, and kind of like mix that together into something that's going to sound like it represents who you are. You can write this in the first person on the first try as like a draft, but go back and try and retool it as if someone was telling the story from their perspective about you. Now, if you're doing your first release, the more songs you're releasing and you're talking about your bio, the better. Because your bio can be a really good reference tool for listeners to say, who does this person remind me of? And if you drop lots of references to, I was inspired by the song from Post Malone or from Lo-Fi Girl and I wrote this song, or you can really hear my influence from Rage Against the Machine on this one song and the guitars, whatever it kind of is that you can kind of word it in and, is true, that can really help out. One of my first releases, I had a song that was not necessarily inspired by Com Trues, but the synths in it reminded me so much of some of the synths that they used. So I wrote that in my bio at the time, and I think when people saw that, they listened to the song and hopefully agreed too. But if they were a fan of Com Trues, that was a good indication to say, I'm going to go listen to that song because it sounds like it could be similar to an artist I already enjoy. And if you've got your own website or social media or you're doing hashtags, if you drop these in there, it's something that search engines could pick up on and also reference when people are searching for those artists or for you. So that's a definitely good idea to do. And the more songs you have, the more opportunities you're going to have to do that with. Now, if it's your first release, really push that release into the bio and say why you really want to kind of, do this song and what you kind of want to get out of the project. Once it's been about 6 months or so, maybe even 3 months, you can update this part of the section, the ending part of the bio, and mention how well the album has been received and reference, is it in blogs? Has it have really great streams? Has it got on some Spotify editorial playlists? Drop those in there so that as people see your bio, they can say, oh, wow, they've done some really cool things for their first release. I'm going to make sure I come back and, listen to the song or the album or check it out or whatever it is. And then after 6 months, maybe you hit the 6 month mark or later, 8 months or a year, It's a good time to also mention what you're going to be doing next. If you've got a follow-up project, if you're working on an album with another band, or if you're focusing on collaborations, whatever it really is, put that in the bio so that people kind of know what to expect from you next. And the last thing I want is to get super invested into an artist from listening to their music, go to their bio, and then I have no idea what they're doing next. And yeah, that's what social media is for, but I can also just see all that on Spotify or your website if I stumble across it. So it's a good idea to throw that in your bio so that people know what to expect from you next. Last thing you want is for someone to say, wow, it's been years since this person's released music. I don't even know what they're doing. Maybe it's not even worth checking out their social media. So trying to give some tips or some indication of what you're going to be doing next in your bio at the very end after 6 months or so. Now that's if you've just started making music or if it's a new project. That's the entry level part of it. The second part is going to be if you've been doing music for maybe a year or two and you've got a couple releases under your belt. Still going to kind of stay the same about where you're from, who you are, and what your genre is. Now's a good time though, if you have moved in those first year or two of you doing this project under this artist name, now's a good time though to highlight that, because if that move has really impacted how you've made music in the last year or is impacting it going forward, now's a good time to mention that so that people know and recognize the change in style of your music. So if you move from New York to California and you notice there's a change in tempo or pace or instrument choice related to that move, it's a good time to highlight it. And you also get the opportunity to reference some of your older music from what you did in New York and how that's changed in some of the new music you may have released since you moved to California or wherever it is. So that's what I'm really trying to get at for the second part. You want to highlight your previous releases because you've got some. So drop some songs in there that you really like, that have performed well. Even mention if they've been on some Spotify playlists, because that's a really good hook. If you've had a song that's been on several Spotify playlists, also mention that too, the name of the playlist. And if you've done some great collaborations, drop those people in there as well too. Kind of reflect on what you've done already in your career. And then you definitely want to put what you're going to be doing next in your career. It's the start of 2025 in a couple of days. So put what you want to do next. If that's more collaborations, or if you've got some songs lined up, or if you're going to be doing some EPs or planned, don't predict something too far in the future. You can keep it kind of vague if you just want to say, I'm going to explore a different side of my genre, or focus on some different elements that I think I've struggled with in the past, or maybe try and incorporate some different instruments or new techniques. That's vague enough. Just do that, because you don't want to give something away. You don't want to say, I'm going to focus on putting Game Boy sound effects in my music going forward. That can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. So keep it vague. You just say you're going to focus on adding some new instrumentation. That's vague, but it's enough to keep me interested. And we never know what's going to happen. You might try that out. If you don't already have songs like that lined up, you might try it out and it just not work. So keep it vague in case something falls through or it just doesn't sound the way you want it to. But pepper in something for people to look forward to. And then for the ending part, you've already told people what you're going to be looking forward to doing, but maybe highlight something additional besides the music. Because at this point, if you've been doing music for maybe about 2 years or so, you can definitely highlight, you're interested in opening a merch store, or you've got another project going on musically, or you're trying to see how you can incorporate another passion into your music career as well. Something else that can maybe relate people to your music. For me, I also do a podcast called Bada Boom, where I focus on comic books. So this might be where I would say, while I'm not doing music, I'm focusing on this aspect in another way. But I would still try and tie it back to my music as much as possible, because I'm still, at this point, I would say within that 2-year mark, really trying to pursue music still. So that's the second one. The third one is pretty much the same, but with one of the big differences. We've mostly just talked about the beginning and the middle, and now we're talking about something that's not necessarily the end, but you've just been doing it for a while. And so yeah, we still want to highlight your achievements, but at this point in time, you can really look back and reflect on your journey. Talk about a lot of stuff you've done inside this music career, this music project. If you want to go back to how you're doing music outside this project, totally do that. If you just want to say, hey, I just want to talk about the releases that I've done inside this project and my thought process and things I've liked in it and my favorite songs, do that too. This is probably at the point you've been doing music for maybe 5 or 6 years. Hopefully you have a pretty extensive catalog. Maybe something that's like close to maybe 50, 60 songs if you've been releasing 10 songs a year. And that's just an estimate. You can release less songs and, still feel like you have a good catalog. But you should have enough stuff you can highlight and talk about and say that you can reflect on, say things you liked about them. But you can go a lot more in detail this time around because you've just been doing it for so long. You've got a lot of songs. Or you can just pick the overall works like an EP or an album and talk about those as a whole and maybe give 1 or 2 sentences that you think about those albums or those releases that you want to highlight. And then still put something out that you want to project into the future, whether it's a new album or a new song. You've got plenty of songs already, so you don't have to be as detailed. You can keep that vague. But if you're not actively going to be pursuing music, or you don't know when you're going to be able to release new music, drop in what you're doing in the meantime. So as I mentioned in the previous one, how I would tie my music into something else I'm doing by mentioning my podcast, I would go into more detail about my podcast and why I'm doing that more and direct people towards that. And that's really good to show people that you're not just sitting around twiddling your thumb because you can't make music anymore, or maybe you just don't have the inspiration. You're giving people another insight into your life. And that's really what a bio is to share your journey and provide insight. So if you're at the point where you're I'm not maybe doing music full time, or maybe I have another full-time job, but I'm still doing this on the side and I've been doing it for a while, highlight your older projects and mention what you're currently working on. So for me, I would say I'm doing my comic book podcast called Bada Boom, and then I would talk about that where we have comic creator guests on and we publish, at least 1 or 2 interviews a month, and we talk about all this other stuff. So that if people want to get in touch with me or, experience more aspects of what I'm doing, they can do that through there without having to feel like I'm leaving them high and dry in the music. And hopefully now, whenever they think about comic books or the things I've just mentioned about my side project or what else I'm doing, next time they see some of those things in real life, they might think of me and then play my music. It's another opportunity to give some connections to your fans and to what you're doing and for them to, be more inside of their thoughts. So those are a couple of ways you can write your bio depending on where you are in your career. And now's the best time to do it because you can have that fresh and ready to go for 2025. You can update all your social media platforms with new pictures, a new perspective, a new direction, and you can get all your artist profile pages for different streaming services all up to date as well, which I highly recommend because there's some that you may not even know you have access to or didn't know you could request access to, and they're just sitting there blank. So get a new profile photo, write that bio, have it proofread, run it by a couple people, and make sure it's promoting the best of you from where you currently are to where you want to be. So, which bio works best for you? Do you have any tips for writing a good bio? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Peace.